Welcome to Career Journeys, a series of videos by the Consortium for Public Education. Here we explore the career experiences and pathways of professionals from a wide variety of careers to help you think about the skills you'll need and the paths you might take after high school.
With the Consortium for Public Education. Today I'm interviewing Nina Barbuto, Executive Director of Assemble and Adjunct Faculty for the School of Architecture at Carnegie Mellon University. Thank you so much for joining us, Nina.
Thank you for having me.
Nina, tell me about your career path. How did you get into architecture and how does that relate to what you do at Assemble?
So when I was in high school, I was very interested in many different things. I was an art kid, as one could imagine, but I also loved English and I loved creative writing. So I loved making stuff, right? Like I loved sculpture, I loved painting, I loved poetry. And I was thinking like, oh, maybe I'll get into fashion design. And my mom said no, I was not allowed. My parents were children of immigrants and they were the first to go to college in their families. And so there wasn't too much of a choice. And I was always a creative person. And so I was like, okay, instead of like clothing for people, what about buildings? Because it's one step up. And somewhere in my brain that made sense. And it does in retrospect too. And so from there started to look into like, well, what does it actually mean to do architecture? And I had the opportunity to participate in apprenticeship through the AIU. And we were able to like redesign buildings and to spend time drawing and modeling as part of our assignments. And I would spend all night long drawing and doing things. And I was like, yeah, I think I want to do architecture. And so then I started to just find out more and more about what's available and had the opportunity to do pre-college at CMU. And so I ended up also applying to architecture schools and I was able to get into CMU, which was crazy. But then I also was able to do a master's out in Los Angeles at Southern California Institute of Architecture. But then right after I graduated, it was the recession. So nobody had jobs. I had a job lined up and it just went away. And so for like the next few years, I was in LA trying many different things. I got to work at a architecture firm who did a research project for Los Angeles public schools. And I had a friend who was doing Teach for America in South Central. And so I went in and did a few months of lessons working with the kids and using architecture as a way to learn about science, technology, engineering, art, and math. With the kids that I was working with, we were able to use all these things, learn from each other, and design classrooms for the future. That really comes into play with how Assemble has been created so that we can be a space where people can feel comfortable to be their true selves and help people to see and to project the world that they would like to happen and to help folks get the tools and skills to make it happen too. So moved back to Pittsburgh, worked on making this idea of Assemble a real thing, had been making art along the way too, had an art collective, and started teaching at the Carnegie Museum of Art and the Science Center while I was in the process of creating Assemble with a whole bunch of other folks. And then started teaching at CMU and have been doing that since. And I also teach in the ID8 program, which is kind of like architecture and robots, as well as design and a few other things. But ultimately, yeah, that's my path, I guess.
That's amazing. Nina, a lot of students will know that creativity is an important skill for both being an artist and being in architecture. What kinds of other skills would you say that it would be important for students to have if they are thinking about the arts or architecture for a career path?
Something else that I think is a skill that you need regardless is being able to learn things and learning to learn. Because the one thing I know is that I don't know a lot. And I think that's something that as you get older, you really acknowledge that there is so much to know. There will always be a new computer program. There will always be a new platform. There will always be something new. So the skill that you can build to help you get through all of this is just learning how to learn. Also, communication. So when we talk about 21st century learning skills, again, didn't exist when I was in school because it still wasn't the 21st century. So yeah, again, this is why creativity is important now. But communication, right? And it's not just like, I know how to talk well, right? It's not just the stuff that comes out of your mouth, or the nonverbal communication, but the way that you listen and the way that you can deeply hear someone as they are communicating to you. Because then you, as a creative person, might help them, whoever is communicating with you, you translate their ideas or the things that they need to make it real, to bring it into fruition.
Nina, so what would surprise students about being in the field of arts or in architecture that aren't part of stereotypes, or just what would surprise them that they really should know if they're thinking about pursuing either of these fields?
It's hard. You're going to work a lot. In architecture school, it's kind of like common knowledge once you get into a program, but you're going to be working as hard, if not harder, than the computer science kids. And you might not be making nearly as much. So you have to learn a little bit about everything, right? You have to understand how different types of buildings are, how different careers work, because you might be designing spaces for them. Like, think, even if you're not going to become someone who's an educator or a childcare provider, you have to know how to design a space for that person, for those folks. Or even think be like, I know that I like, if you like to do hair, right? You would have to still learn how one does hair to design a hair salon. So it's like building empathy for everyone else, as well as like truly diving deep in scale, and then being able to see the big picture as well. So you learn how it all works together. Another thing with architecture and arts is like, you really do need to know how to do business, right? So you definitely use math, but it's not like as complicated math as you would think. There's always computers and engineers to double check your work, but you should learn finance regardless. Even if you're just like an artist producing stuff on your own and not working with a larger organization, you need to make sure that you are getting paid and you're getting paid your worth, and how to price your own art as well as market yourself, because it's like you are your own business, right? And just because you want to make art because it makes you happy, you got to think like, is this really what is going to pay my bills? Because then you got to take it to a different level.
So Nina, if we're thinking about, I'm a high school student and I'm thinking about a career in the arts or in architecture, what questions should I ask myself to know if this might be a good fit for me?
Are you prepared to do things that you might not like to support the things that give you joy and really like it, they are your passions? I think that's something. Like, when I was in high school and I was like, oh, I mean, also, architecture ultimately, if you're not the one in charge, like if you're not the person who is in charge of everything else, you get to draw and build models all day. How great is that? You still have to also understand, like, you have to read the codes and understand like what is allowed, what is safe, how do I make it accessible for everybody? So you have these certain conditions that you're adapting to, but from there you can be as creative as you want. But it's like, still, you got to do certain things to make sure that that can get done. One more thing on that one too.
Mm-hmm.
No one builds a building by themselves. You always will be working with other people. Artwork, you could be doing it solo, but like really learning how to work with others, especially if you're going to do film, that is always a very complicated, lots of emotions. Uh, there's a lot of emotional labor in architecture and in the arts, right? But thinking about how you like hold it together and like make space for everyone to be there. So communication and working with others.
Nina, what's one piece of advice you would offer students who are interested in pursuing the arts or architecture?
Reach out to the people that you are fans of. And also too, I would reach out to different folks, especially like if you're looking to apply to schools, reach out to the faculty. See if you can at least have a conversation with them to think about what's the school actually like. Because like the admissions are going to tell you all these things because they want you to come or they want you to be afraid to come. Like there's a lot of stuff there. But talking to people who actually work there is very important because then they can tell you like what is the culture, right? What is how will you be supported? What are the main prerogatives and goals that are being practiced at that school? I would also say, and same too, like if there's an artist that you have a fan, like you're a fan of on Instagram, even like reach out to them, send them a DM, be like, hey, I'm a fan. Do you have any tips for me? Or like, can I help you in any way? Right. I would also make sure to, especially if you're applying for different colleges, see if you can do a sleeping bag weekend so that you can build relationships with current students, because that might be a great buddy for you down the line.
Nina, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and experiences with us today.
No problem. And if folks are interested, I'm always happy to talk to them about architecture. And if I can't connect them to the next step, I will connect you to that person to connect to that next step. There's a lot of supportive folks in Pittsburgh to help kids, especially high schoolers, to learn about architecture. So don't be afraid.
For more information or to learn about other careers in the Career Journey series, visit our website and check back soon for our next installment. Thanks!